Welcome to another episode of the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast, where hosts Andreas and Tim dive into the critical issues facing today's workforce. They ask the big question, what are we really measuring in these environments, and is it driving true productivity? With candid insights on employee engagement, leadership challenges, and outdated management practices, Andreas and Tim break down why 70% of labor may be going to waste and what companies can do to turn the tide. They'll also discuss how businesses can stop relying on outdated metrics like attendance and focus on outcomes that matter, plus a sneak peek into their new scorecard approach for measuring success. If you're a leader, manager, or simply someone navigating today's work culture, this episode will get you thinking about how to stop doing the stupid stuff and start driving real results.
Hey everybody, welcome to another amazing, fantastic edition of Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast. So I am here with cellmate, co-conspirator, Tim Keefe. I got to get the title right there. So Tim, what are you and I going to be bantering about today?
Well, I think banter is probably a good topic for it. I think that as we've been talking over the last several weeks, that around return to office mandates, companies like AWS and others. We also have companies that have taken the reverse and have completely embraced the work from home virtual model. And then we had a company down in New Zealand that's doing 4-day work weeks very successfully. And then, there are companies that are finding the hybrid model to work for them. And I look at all of this, and I guess the big question I have, and I throw it out on the table for you and I to talk about is, okay, what are we measuring? It's not clear to me what we're measuring in all these different models. We have lots and lots of employees, and I don't think a lot of them are very engaged in the work they're doing. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I think, and we've talked about this on a couple other podcasts too, of it's really effective engagement. And so when you have what we went through with the pandemic and virtualization, and now you have the return to office mandates, there's, it's less familiar routine for how you do things, because now you have some of your team is spread out right virtually, and some of them are in office. Maybe they're in office certain days, not consistently. I think a lot of companies are still trying to figure that out, right? And so as they figure that out, then the next step is to how do you establish the routine so people get more habitual in performing the routine, right? And being there when you're expecting them to be there. And that's how you're going to start driving, I think, effective communication and engagement. But That's the first step. That's like putting together a 1,000-piece puzzle, and you drop like half of the puzzle on the floor.
Well, I'm just laughing at the routine because I've been around for a few decades, and I just remember people coming into the office at 9:00, carrying the Wall Street Journal in under their arm. They get their first cup of coffee, read the newspaper till I don't know, about 10. Oh, it's morning coffee break. And then, the people sit in the break room and would BS for 30 minutes. And now it's 10:30 and nobody's really done anything. And so maybe they crack on, do an hour of whatever. And, oh, wait a minute. What did you guys want to do for lunch today?
Exactly.
And then, at the end of the day, you realize that if you got 2 hours of productivity out of that group, and again, I'm talking the 90s, right? Like, this is not a new problem. And now we have kind of the same thing going on where there's this, hey, you got to be back in the office. Okay. What we care about is you swiping your ID at the door. And so we know you entered the office. We have a track of that. And that led to the whole coffee badging. People would go into the office, swipe their card. Maybe somebody else swiped their card for them too. Like, now we're almost back to the old days with the time clocks. Where people used to, hey, can you put my card in? And so, okay, again, what are we measuring? That feels like attendance. I'm just measuring attendance. Well, and I'm wondering if that's really an effective use of your labor, of your resources.
100%. And what I think is, one, I think a lot of companies are just measuring attendance, and they think that maybe that's an effective way to get back to a level of normalcy, right? So routines can be established. The thing is, the way that I see it is, again, my subjective view on it, is we had an opportunity to really measure outcomes. And when I say outcomes, I'm talking about outcomes for everybody, for any work at home employee, and the amount that they're producing that's contributive to the success of the organization, nonprofit, for profit, Fortune
What are you
500,
talking
mom
about?
and
Like a
pop,
balanced scorecard approach?
like scorecard IQ. Someone should do something, with AI in that. But
Well, but for a lot of our audience, that may even be a new concept for them, because I mean, I
yeah,
worked in a lot of organizations where there was no balanced scorecard. You were lucky if you got a chance to hear what your department objectives were for the year, for the quarter,
oh
and
yeah,
then at the end of the quarter there would be a roll up, and you'd be told, all right, we're at 110% of our sales target and 80% of our
yep,
budget target, and you're like, okay, but I don't know how what I did either contributed in a positive or a negative way to that outcome. And
exactly.
yeah,
Well,
so
and I think it's really any business that's out there. And so, I don't want to spill the beans too much, but I guess we're not going to go like stealth on it. But we're developing a scorecard IQ, which effectively measures all of that at every level of an organization with a clean roll up, up to the CEO level, if that's, what you wish. But there isn't an industry that there isn't some way, shape, or form to objectively measure on a much more frequent basis. And I don't want to get too off track because you made a really, really good point of the frequency to the individual contributors within companies or within organizations. They don't know what the hell's going on. They think, oh, well, I'm not getting yelled at by my boss, so I guess I'm doing a good job. Oh, quarterly earnings are coming out. We're a publicly traded company. Oh, our stock's down 8%. Okay, well, what did I have to do with it? I gave it my best and I didn't get written up. It's always, I didn't get told, I didn't get written up, I didn't have some
right.
negative repercussion. And that's because there's this kind of void of communication. And if you go look at numerous studies, I think the last one I looked at was no, it wasn't McKinsey. I think it was a Bain and Company study that showed some of the top issues within, probably, I think it was mid to large size enterprise organizations that were surveyed. But poor communication and misalignment on expectations was one of the highest feedback points from the middle managers and up that they surveyed. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're missing it at mid and upper level management, you're definitely missing at the frontline people. That if you remove them from the business, you don't have a business. You can,
Well,
get strategic and slim towards the top, but if you don't have the frontline workers, you're not supporting them, and they're not being productive. They don't even know what the hell you're holding them accountable to or what the goal is, right? You don't have a business, and I don't care if
well,
it's for profit or not.
no, I agreed. And again, I go back to, okay, how do I help the individual employee? By the way, as we know from the Quadrix report that we've quoted a million times on our podcast, only 30% of your employees are actually care about what they're doing. Maybe care is even too strong a word, or even engaged in their job.
Right.
30% on average. Okay, so I'm sure it'll be up and down, but like on average, then 70% of your labor expense is wasted. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Like if your factory was only operating at 70% effectiveness, you'd burn the factory down and build a new one. And so we've got some real serious problems here in terms of, I mean, really starts with, do people know what their job is? Right. I
Yeah.
mean, and I talk to people in different jobs, like I have a family member who's on the e-commerce side, and they have an interesting job. They have days where there's nothing to do, and they have days as they get ready for getting particularly coming up with Black Friday, a huge amount of work that has to get done in preparation for that, to make sure that everything in their electronic catalog is accurately priced, accurately described, searchable, all of that good stuff. And yet, if you were to ask them, how did you know you did a good job, or how did you know if you're doing what you're expected to do? They're all looking for that direct feedback from their supervisor, of whom there are fewer and fewer as more companies get rid of middle management. And those middle managers or the supervisors have less and less time to give feedback. So
And
I think
and
it's a big
and
problem.
let's be honest too, exactly what you just described there. I would say they're not adequately trained either. So not only are they being promoted into people
Oh, the
management
supervisors.
roles, the
Yeah, yeah.
supervisors are not supported, just like I don't think the frontline folks are really as supported. They're like, well, Tim, remember this training we created? This is my sarcastic voice too, by the way. Tim, remember this training that we created like 5 years ago in this PowerPoint? You went through the whole training and you're not hitting the goals of 2024 for the training that was created in 1998. You're not hitting the goals in 2024. Okay. And I'm being a bit facetious there, but
Well,
kind of sort of not either,
well,
you know.
you're not being facetious in terms of, I mean, we've both seen it in real life, right? Like, I mean, I just not that long ago looked at some training documentation that a client wanted us to update, and it was dated in 2005, 2006. And sure, I am guarantee you that there have been edits and modifications to it, but aren't documented. And therefore, now you don't have documented processes. You have verbal lore in your office, and you probably even don't even have to, right back to our original point. What are the activities, the outcomes, the things you need to do in your role? Like, for example, I mean, HR person, great one might be your expectation is that all of your assigned employees at least get feedback on their work productivity every month. Great objective, right? You and I used to work for a company that was their objective, and that sounds awesome until you realize that what happens is at the last day of the month, everybody
Hmm.
just runs down and checks sheets saying, I talked to everybody. Whether I actually talked to anybody or not is irrelevant because nobody's checking that. They're
Or you
just
drive
checking to
by,
say,
you
well,
you
right.
drive by and say, "Oh, hey Tim, you did a great job this month." And oh, coaching session, check,
All
got
right.
it,
Well,
nailed
or
it.
what I would do is do the team Zoom session and say, anybody got an issue? Yeah, good, done.
Have 10
Um,
people. I know how to use tools effectively. I had 10 people join and I asked them, I coached them, it's not even asked them, I coached them.
yeah, I coached them. I coached them on how to do a better job, which is take a deep breath, just get on with it, or something equally, more obnoxious in terms of negative reinforcement. But
Yeah,
again, to your point, like, do the people doing the work, are they getting the right training and the support they need to be
right.
successful? And the answer is no. That's why engagement is so low. To the people
Yeah.
that are expected to provide that training and support and engagement, well, there's fewer and fewer of those as companies get rid of middle management. And therefore, the answer would, and those people that are left have broader spans of control. And guess how much training they've gotten to actually do that work of being an effective leader, supervisor, counselor, and all the other hats you have to wear? And the answer
Hmm.
is a big fat zero, or
Yeah.
maybe a minimal, like a 20-minute company policy review of what a supervisor is required to do. And here's a copy of the employee handbook. Good luck with it.
Yeah.
And
I would
yeah,
say, sorry, let me just share this quick thought you just gave me with your ramble there. I was gonna say
those aren't
spiel.
rambles.
I was
They're
gonna
not
say
rambles.
spiel, but spiel sounds too official. But no,
Just don't.
seriously, I look at it like this, in whatever phraseology that you just used, like this thought popped into my head. If you have to rely on company policy to tell you every single thing, and you don't have independent logic and emotional intelligence to view a situation for what's going on right now and looking at where it needs to be steered to get to the destination, like I look at the company policy should be guardrails or help if you need it, but that shouldn't be the first thing you go to is, oh well, the policy is this and the procedure is this, we got to have processes here, we got to think about it, step back and think about it logically. Like here to quote
No.
a
Yeah.
famous philosopher here, right? Michael Jackson, man in the mirror. Look at the man in the mirror and say, am I really thinking about the interests of the people that, and talking about middle management, people leaders here, am I really doing the right thing to help these people? And is this training the right thing? Do I genuinely feel inside, regardless of office politics or otherwise? Ask yourself, right? If you can't be open with yourself, you got a different soft skill you got to work on. But if you look at yourself in the mirror and say, yes, I think this training is solid, and these people, I need to hold these people accountable. And if you can do that ethically, then all right, more power to you. I can guarantee you the people that we've talked to, right? They look at it and they complain to us because we open it up and they feel safe to open up to us and say, yeah, this training is kind of shitty. All right, well, you're telling someone who probably, I would love to go in and redesign the training, don't get me wrong, for organizations, but have you told your company, your organization that? And how can you do it in the right way, right? So you're not, and as much as I hate to admit it, you got to play office politics in some cases, and you got to do it the right way. And there is an art to it, whether everybody wants to admit it or not. There 100% is an art to
Well,
doing it. It's there, it's present, but you gotta ask yourself honestly, is this the right thing to do? Do I feel like this is the right thing to do? And start at that point. When you do, I think logically you're going to feel, I can't explain or articulate exactly the million thoughts in my head, probably as polished as I need to right here. But once you ask yourself that, I think the clarity of thought process you're going to have is going to be much, much more focused and open to being more decisive with a higher degree of more favorable
Yeah.
outcomes.
But one thing that comes with that, and I just put it out there, I mean, the benefit of like regulation book or employee handbook or whatever is it allows supervisors to say, hey, I did it by the book. And therefore, I'm protected because I did it by the book, right? I didn't make any independent decision. Now, I agree with you. I think that when people operate that way, they're not effective leaders, but it's because they're afraid.
Well,
And
yeah.
the
Who
other
wrote the
thing on the
book?
leadership, well, but the other thing on the leadership side is if, let's say, for example, I'm trying to make a judgment call based on the people involved, the circumstances, the context, and everything else, and it's not exactly the way the employee handbook is written out, or it isn't even written in the employee handbook,
Mhm.
then if it goes sideways, then I could be held accountable for that. Now, the question is, does the supervisor have the feeling that they have the support of the organization to act that way, or have they had the training to be able
Mhm.
to make an appropriate judgment call? Because let's face it, if you don't know where all the levers are, it's pretty hard to make a judgment call. Otherwise you're really reaching. Now, the hope is like if we're people who with good IQ and EQ and we've got good balanced experience, we're going to make a good judgment call. The problem is judgment calls are just that. They get to be risky. So the question then becomes like for anybody in an organization, is this a risk accepting organization? Like, remember how people
Right.
used to say we learn by falling forward and all that kind of crap? And yet when you fail, those are the first organizations to come over and say, you know what, you missed your numbers 2 quarters in a row. I don't care why, you're out. And therefore they become an organization of fear. Again, you and I have worked for organizations like that, where in fact, if you ask them, and they have beautiful culture statements and all the rest of the stuff, but when it came down to the nitty gritty of a day to day in the life, that culture stuff went right out the window. And it was, at least in my experience, you saw what it was. It was an organization ruled by fear. And that's right. So what you were just talking about a minute ago. The reason I'm not doing it is I'm afraid. I'm not giving you feedback on training because I'm worried about retaliation from the trainers or from my supervisor or from whatever.
Right.
And God, we hear this retaliation word all the time, which is terrifying to think that. I've been in a meeting where the chief human resources officer goes, yeah, we have a culture of retaliation. Like, I don't
Yeah.
even know how to
We have to put
respond to
safe
that.
we have to put safeguards in place so we don't have retaliation. But I mean that's kind of my point too though, is one, how is that going to change? And it's going to change with the people that are on the front line and engage or should be engaging with those frontline workers. And you know what? I'm not going to name names here, but anybody listening to this can go look at Tim's LinkedIn profile, my LinkedIn profile, and guess what? When we got to the point where we said, yeah, this is pretty fucking stupid, we're out of here because you're not doing the right stuff, you can see what we did. We went and, Tim made his own company and I came and joined him later on. And so I think my point is if you feel like if you're in a fear organization, break the chains off and go figure it out. Don't be afraid to go figure it out. There's a lot of responsibility that's going to be on your shoulders, but that's why you have hopefully the support
Yep.
mechanisms that you have. But you got to figure out, how can you get to that clarity mentally of seeing things for what they are, and using, here's the other thing too. I've been very subjective in what I'm saying. I'm also including in my synopsis here, and I probably need to literally say it, you also got to be looking at the data points for all of this too, right? Not just making soul, gut reactionary
No,
calls,
no.
right? But look at data and incorporate all of that, even if your overhead's not, your managers are not. And like your comment about, well, the guidebook, and there should be a guidebook. Don't get me wrong. I don't want anybody to misconstrue. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a process adherence or a guidebook. There should be, but it also should be updated frequently. And you should not be in a fear culture that
Right.
says, hey, who wrote that guidebook? Oh, was it Rip Van Winkle in 1889? And they're saying, oh, yeah, you can't work from home because guess what? That's the way we've always done it. We've never worked from home.
Right. Right.
Yeah. You should be able to ask, why the hell can't we work from home? And then present your case of why it could work, right? So don't just be a jerk about it, but also present solutions and have a dialogue. That's the piece. And what do we start off talking about, Tim? Engagement. That's how
Hmm.
engagement starts. You don't take absolutist position on, the north end versus the south end. You figure out, how do you have open dialogue and go back and forth and problem solve and create. That's how you start engagement, right? Well, once
Well,
you figure out, before that, sorry, once you figure out, can I let my people work from home and do it, or do I force them all to come into the office
well,
like we were talking about earlier?
and agreed. And, we've all been there for my office door is always open, which is not. We've always been there for the town hall where everybody who asks a question gets publicly berated for asking a stupid question, or,
Or they're afraid, to ask a question, so
they're
they ask a
right.
softball question, right?
Right. They go the one, well, how have you been such an amazing leader, sir, given that, you have 7 children or whatever? You're exactly right. Versus somebody going, yeah, but how am I going to get it all done, given that you just cut my resources in half? That's the hard question. And,
Yeah.
and I remember, what was that, think better, or whatever it was, do more with less, like, and that's good enough. That's leadership. And you're like, that's not leadership. I mean, that's lazy leadership. And I
That's
guess we,
marketing.
yeah,
Some CMO said to the CEO somewhere, "Hey, just do it like this." Oh, there you go. That's a
uh,
methodology.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, or yeah, it's been around any of these things. So to wrap up here, I think that the big topic for today is, regardless of the model, right? Return to office, hybrid, work at home, 4-day work week, whatever. What's really important is, what are you measuring? And is
Mhm.
that measurement work both ways? That is, it aligned for the person who's being held accountable for it, as well as what the organization needs? Because again, loading somebody up, balanced scorecard or not, and saying, okay, you got to do 200x, and you go, that's impossible. I can't,
Yeah.
there's no way I could get that done given the resources that you've given me. Yet that's a setup for failure. And then, of course, the flip side of that is, then people really do disconnect because they know they're going to fail. And then they start
Yeah.
looking for another job.
Well,
Or
then their
even worse,
supervisors,
yeah,
and then their supervisors are like, "Yeah, this is BS too," and then they get demotivated. It's like a domino effect, you
right.
know?
Right. And then nobody believes the numbers anyway, because,
Right.
the numbers are put out there for the street, and they go, oh, yeah, we're going to double our revenue in the next, 2 years. Yet we're not going to spend any money to do that. It's just going to happen magically. And you're like, yeah, no, that's not the way things work. Anyway,
Yeah.
uh, but I think it goes
Agreed.
back to, like, what are we doing right now? What it feels like, people are very worried about attendance, which I feel,
Yep.
that makes me feel like it's grade school all over again. Did you show up or not? Nobody's
Right.
asking, did you, or anything else. And then, I just want to open the taco truck in front of these big office parks, because nobody's doing any work. They just want to hang around outside and eat tacos and drink coffee.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah. You do tacos, I'll do coffee. I think we'll be millionaires by the end of the week. But no, I agree. I think it's more about, for the people that are returned to office, I think it's revert in a bad way, by the way. I think it's reverting back to what we used to see of, I'm thinking more about, can I be in the right place at the right time so the right executive or manager sees me, and
oh my God.
I
Yeah.
give them the attaboy or something that leaves an impression on them. And they, you know what? They don't go and they look at my attendance only, and they say, "Oh yeah, man, Andreas shows up every single day, and every time I see him, he's got a big smile on his face, and he tells me I'm doing a great job." It's positive association, right? You go look at
Yep.
his numbers, and not doing
He's
crap.
not
He's
doing
reading,
anything.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, he's more worried about his parking space in the parking lot, than anything that is really contributing to our business as a whole.
yeah,
Anyway, I think this is, again, we don't know the answer to it, but I have some suggestions, and I think, as you talked about, balanced scorecard is one of our products that we have in a pipeline. And for those of you who have enjoyed our Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast, and maybe and hopefully you've read our Stop Doing Stupid Stuff, the original book, we also have some additional ones coming out over the next year, that I think will actually find very, very interesting, particularly in the areas of data analytics, CRM, even travel and leadership. And we think these are critical conversation pieces. We think it's really important to drive the conversation, to help people think outside the box, because this time of chaos is when companies need to be thinking about new ways of doing things. And
yeah,
for all of us, this is the time where I think it's about getting together and thinking out loud and talking it through, and being conversant in your industry, and more importantly, the bigger things that are happening across industries, like customer engagement, and more importantly, as we talk about frequently on this podcast, employee engagement.
yeah. Engagement, and I'll wrap and say everything Tim just said. We don't have all the answers, and we're not going to pretend like we have all the answers because there's too many variables impacting every situation. But the methodology that Stop Doing Stupid Stuff is written on is about that. It's about figuring out what is the getting to the core of each of the problems and kind of dissecting, analyzing, and actioning them to measurable outcomes so you know you're on the track to improvement. Kind of I don't know what is it, like 300 something pages, so I can't spiel it, quick enough. But that's exactly what it is. It's not easy.
Yeah.
You guys aren't facing easy fixes. You might come across an easy fix every once in a while, but that's not the norm. So don't berate yourself or your teams. Work together, figure it out together, and be proud of that.
Well,
you get to work together and figure it out. That's kind of the mentality that you have to have. And Stop Doing Stupid Stuff. The methodology kind of gives you frameworks to help you enable doing that.
it just seems really straightforward to me. Just stop doing the stupid stuff and it'll get better.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks, Andreas. As always, hope everything's good with you down there in the Florida weather and the storms, and all your family is good. And look forward to talking to you next week, my friend.
Yep. Likewise, Tim. And for all the listeners, please like, subscribe, smash the like button or whatever the younger people say. That's pretty cool and catchy. I hope you guys have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.